And this is what blows everybody's minds, because the moment Alan, I said, "That is mom," she stopped. And she's like, "I have to go back home." It was the sense something is happening at home with one of my babies. And my mom turned around and she started to run back home. I was born and grew up in Bogota, Colombia. And there I lived with my parents and my sisters. And back then, both of my parents worked and would leave us at the care of a maid. And she was a lady that really didn't pay much attention to us when my parents were not around. And one morning they left, it was early, and this lady went to her room, and my sister and I, both being so little, look at each other. I'm like, "Oh, nobody's paying attention. Let's go play in the patio." And they really didn't like us, so it was not that good to be in the patio by ourselves because it was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was to collect water for hand washing clothes. And then my sister and I found a ball and decided, let's play. We didn't pick anything else, but let's play there in the tank. And then we found stools because the walls were tall, and we climbed the tank. And she sat in the flat surface for scrubbing, so she was a little bit more safer, but I, of course, had to be in the other side. And my sister grabbed the ball and she threw it. When she threw the ball, she didn't apply enough force, and it fell, and it was floating in the water. When I thought, I can grab it, and I leaned forward. And the moment I touched it, it rolled, and I fell in the tank. And that was the moment, like the first feeling, Alan, was that sense of like this water was frigid cold. And I always mention that people have the misconception that because I was born in Colombia, I come from hot weather country. But Bogota is very high up in the Andes. So the first feeling was like, it's like I pretty much, like, that took my breath away right there. I never have been in a pool, never had my head under the water. I didn't know that if you fall, you're underwater, you drown. So imagine at this moment first, that feeling of being so cold, and now the sense why I cannot breathe. And then I went into this state of absolute panic. The last thing I saw with my eyes open after I drowned was the darkness of the space, because it was a tank that was entirely made of cement. It had a roof, so the space in itself was dark. So the last thing, in imagining this anguish, and on top of that, being in this space that seemed scary, when I am perceiving this darkness and I went into peace, I saw light. And this light came from below. And when I saw this light, it was, imagine that sense of like, now there is light, now I'm not in the dark. Going from that absolute horror in just a blink like that to state of complete peace. It was like, nothing to do, no need to escape from the tank, no need to breathe, no need to do anything, go anywhere. Complete and absolute peace, calmness. I started to see bubbles. I was looking at these bubbles, and it was by chasing these bubbles that I turned around and I saw a body suspended in the water. This is when I realized, that is my body. And this is another incredible part. It was that feeling of, this is normal, like this already happened before. And I was completely aware that that was my body. And that's when I saw the body and made the decision, no, forget it, I'm not going back there. And then I turned around and left the body behind. And then when I turned around, I started to see flowers, and the flowers were blooming from nowhere. Imagine, this was like something absolutely beautiful, majestic. And it's when I was picked by the flower. So even at this point, that sense of dimension disappeared, because how I could be picked by a flower. It's like, now I'm being picked and I'm being carried, and it's just, this place where like, oh, I don't have to do anything. Just there, completely relaxed. And I put the analogy that is like going back to the womb, where you don't have to do absolutely anything. You're just being done. It's just like, oh, nothing to do. And then when I am in this state of bliss, in just a flash like that, I appear in the maid's room. And I am like floating, like from the ceiling, and I'm looking down, and she's there listening to the radio. And the moment I look at her, I said, oh, that's Maria. And Alan, this experience is so clear in my mind that I even remember the soap opera that she was listening in the radio. And later, years later, we just to prove that this was true, when I mentioned the name of the the soap opera and everything, we went to do search, and this is all real. And then later, like when she just didn't pay attention, nothing happened again, like in just a blink like that. Now I appear in my mom's path. She went to work. She didn't have a car. She had to walk, and she had to cross this entire neighborhood. And then when I appear again, like floating above her, and I look at her from above, I'm like, oh, that's mom. And this is what blows everybody's minds, because the moment Alan, I said, that is mom, she stopped. Just stopped. And she's like, I have to go back home. It was the sense something is happening at home with one of my babies. And my mom turned around and she started to run back home. And at that moment, I look at her and I'm like, oh, why she's running? And this is incredible, because again, this is the part that for the people that may wonder, I think this is a really good example of validating the experience, because at that moment, my mom was the one that perceived what was happening and started to run. So, but the moment that she's running, I turned around and I saw a dog at the end of the street. And the moment I see the dog, I adore animals. And the moment I see the dog, I am with the dog. And I'm like, whoa. So I turn again my point of view, and now I see a park. And the moment I see the park, I am in the park. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. And now I started to have fun playing this game of going places. So this whole concept, this whole perception I have of time and space completely changed, vanished. And now I could be anywhere at any time. And then I was having so much fun. And it was again like in a blink. Now I appear in a realm that was made of pure, intense, bright light. Felt that I was home. Oh, I am home. I am home. Again, give another analogy, like I have left in the morning to go to school, go to work, whatever, and I was just back. It's not like even 3 years passed. It just happened. That it was that feeling of like, I just left and now I am back. And although I had seen my body suspended in the water, until this moment, I didn't have the realization that, wow, that is not me. At this moment, I had that clarity. That is not who I am. That is not Ingrid. And even it was this sense that Ingrid, all these aspects that made what I knew as up to that moment as Ingrid, it was that sense, I am not that. And it's when I realized myself as a being of light. And I started to have this sense that I was like dissolving. Like I'm just like, oh, it feels incredibly good. And it's, again, like in this experience, everything happened like in a blink. In this moment, it's when I felt that, Some people call it emptiness, some people call it non-self, I call it nothingness. I went into that space, into that dimension, or into that feeling of nothingness. And some people get scared with the word nothing, but I said, it's nothing because it's nothing I knew, but it's the wholeness because it's experiencing the totality of everything. I said I cannot give you description. There's no meaning, there's no color, there's no movement, there's nothing that I could describe with words, nothing that I could tell you. It's everything I have not seen. And at the same time, everything I have seen. So it's like experiencing wholeness. So I guess the only words I could say is a moment of absolute presence and pure consciousness. And I am like, how would you say now I am the state of complete bliss. And I am just there being when my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing, Alan. My mom, we live in a very big house, and my mom always listened to her intuition. And I have to say this, it's not just about having intuition, but listening to that intuition. And my mom did, not just by turning around and going back home, but when she entered the house, we live in a big house, but she knew exactly where to go. And she directed herself to the back of the house. And my oldest sister, she was still there. And some people asked me why she didn't go to the maid. And it was because this was a lady that actually was pretty harsh with us, and she mistreated us. So imagine she didn't want to go tell her we are in the patio where we don't supposed to be. So she was there trying to help me, get me out of the tank. She was too little, she couldn't even reach me. And when my mom entered the patio, my sister looked at her and said, Mom Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. So my mom jumped in the tank, she got me out, and she worked with children. She was trained to do some kind of CPR, whatever she knew for children, and she started to do what she knew to revive me. She said that I was like a raggedy doll. She said there was no pulse, there was no breathing. I was completely pale, blue, lips and nails, and she's just doing anything she knew. But at that moment, I was completely disconnected to whatever was happening here. I didn't feel anything. I was in my bliss. While my mom was in there in her anguish, trying to do everything she knew. And again, like in everything in this experience, in just like a second, a split of a second, I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. I felt the vacuum, like, and I felt like I was being pulled, like I was being like vacuumed back. And it's when there was nothing I could do, but it was that sense of like, no. And I didn't want to. And it's, in my case, nobody told me you have to go back, nothing. It was just, you're going back. And like being sent like directly through the shooting, like, oh, and now I am back in the body. And it was this sense, and I knew I was back because the sense of coldness, the sense of not feeling well, the sense of I really didn't want to be here. I was angry and I was disappointed, and I'm like, no way. And from that moment, Alan, things became really difficult because I became really angry. I didn't want to be back. And the other thing is that I came back with an awareness that I didn't have before. And this is the other thing. People ask, how can you know you were so young? But no, I had that clarity because when I came back, it was that shocking. It was this sense of, I look at my parents and I was, because I had experienced that sense of oneness. When I look at them, it was the sense of they're not just my biological parents. I felt them as my equal. So I became very rebellious because I was like, why do I have to hear what you have to say? And in the school, it came later, it continued because I didn't want to be conditioned. And this is a very important thing, is that later in my life, many years later, when I was able to ask why my near-death experience happened when I was so young, incredibly, the way the answer come was like, it happened when you were so young because one, you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet. So I understood why I became so rebellious, not just with my parents, but in a school. I went to Catholic school, and through all my life, I did not want to be conditioned. The other thing, when I came back, I look at myself and I had that absolute clarity. I am not this child. I am not a child. Because this is the other thing. People will say, but you had the mind of a child. And I said, no. Once I started to remember who I truly was, my body was the body of a child. See, my language was I was limited by the language I knew, but I was not. My feeling, my awareness was, I am not this child. So after that, I never really felt that I was a child. And when I look at other children, I was like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. So I couldn't relate. I started to have abilities I didn't have before. So I'm telling you, I'm just about to be 3 years old, and no long after my NDE, now I could read and write. See, how can you explain that? I could resolve mathematical problems. I could put together complex puzzles, and I started to develop more complex language. So it's like, and for me later in school, everything was pretty simple. And it was like, to me was the sense, Alan, like, I'm not learning anything, I'm just remembering. And incredibly, although all these seem like incredible gifts, over time it became more like burdens, because there was not a school system that could understand this. There was not people around me that could understand this. So despite having all this awareness and all these abilities, I became pretty isolated. I felt different. I felt angry. I refused to eat. I didn't want to be with anyone. I even reached the point that I didn't want to be touched. I was just angry. And then it's when I said that, oh gosh, the help that I needed came in the most miraculous way. And what happened was that after my NDE, I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences. And at the time, we didn't even know any of this, nobody around. This is the other thing, Alan. I always say that it's like, for me, the doors never close, because after that came all these out-of-body experiences and more things that I will mention in a minute. But I always say it's like the door never closed. Going back to that part that I never was able to forget. Then later, the way the answer for this came was like, of course the door never closed, because there are no doors. In reality, when we look at the sun shining, it shines for everyone. The light of God, the light of consciousness, the light of awareness is here for everybody, always. The doors never close. The ones that close the door is ourselves, due to conditioning, due to beliefs, due to the culture, due to our experiences, our fears, whatever is there, we start closing those doors. But at that moment, it was like, I was so young, so free from all conditioning, and now with this awareness that those doors were completely open. And now every time I went to sleep, I was going back to that realm of the light. Of course, my parents fired that lady that almost let me drown, hire a new one. But this is the other thing. Look at how everything happens with the perfection that it meant to happen. Because I was sleeping a lot, because I wanted to be in this realm of the light. This lady was okay with that, because if the child is sleeping, you don't have to pay attention. You just always, he's behaving, he's doing good there. So that gave me the chance to sleep a lot. My parents kept working, and then every time I slept, I was back in this realm of the light. And in one of these journeys, I was surrounded by starlight figures. So and I even see what your background there, and imagine something like that. In one of these journeys one day is like infinite starlight figures. But the difference with your background is that this whole space was bright light, and the lights were all shining in different colors, and it was absolutely beautiful. And then in another journey, one of these starlight figures that was shining in like pure gold, it approached me and it shaped itself into a human form, like showing me we are the same. And it's when I had that clarity, and I'm like, you are a being of light. And this light, this being touched me, and I had this clarity, and I woke up, and I wanted to now sleep all the time. So, but now this is the part, and look at how the teachings present in all different ways. Is that clarity that we need balance. I could not be the baby that slept forever, the girl that slept forever. So now something needed to happen in order to balance this, because all I wanted to do was to sleep. Then not long after, one day I'm taking a shower, and I'm just relaxed there in the shower when this blue, intense, shiny light appear in the bathroom. And now I am in this state of awe. Now the beings of light are here. So now I started to see the beings of light everywhere. So I didn't need to be sleeping. And that balance, that situation right there. And then I started to feel the sense of being home. And it comes another teaching. And it's the part where I realized years later, at this moment, I didn't have these clarities. Later in my life is when all these realizations came. And it was the sense of like, I get it. Home is not a place, it's a state of being. Because when I started to see the beings of light here, I started to heal. And I started to feel the sense of being at home. And I started to wanting to play with my sisters and talk to my parents and communicate with others. So the healing started to happen. So at the beginning, always was the sense I want to go back there. I want to go there. And what this was showing me is that you don't have to go anywhere. It's here. So, wow, I started to feel that sense of I can be here and I can be okay. But this is the other thing. I was, because I didn't have the sense of that I belong to this. I didn't have, for me, it was like, I'm not this person. I didn't feel related to my name, to my body, to Ingrid. So every time that people call my name, I will feel very aggravated. And although I was healing, I was feeling better, I was throwing these big tantrums. Because again, imagine a child that I couldn't comprehend what is happening. And people around me didn't have any clue what was happening to Ingrid. And then at this moment, that one night they were calling me for dinner, Ingrid. And I'm like, "Oosh, don't call me like that." So the lady came like, "Ingrid, we're calling you for dinner and you're not coming." And I said, "Don't call me like that." And then I would just say, "That is not my name." And the lady said, "Then what is your name? How should we call you?" And I said, "I do not need one." Of course, they had it. They sent me to bed. And then I was so mad. I was crying. And it's when I asked, like in my suffering, it was always this question, like, why is this happening to me? But this is the first time, like I said to you, by now I could see the beings of light. I could smell them. Every time they were present, I could smell flowers, like the most delicious. Just imagine the most incredible perfume, the most amazing flowers. And I'm like, oh, they are here. I could sense. And now this is the first time I started to be able to hear. And it's when I heard the voice talking to me, like almost like in a whisper, like, this is our secret, like saying to me, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. You don't imagine how relief, because it was that sense like, "Oh, I'm not crazy." Yeah, I don't need a name. And they said, and of course, and later I understood too that names are important, that are needed in our human experiences, that they carry frequency, they're beautiful. But at that moment, that was my experience. And it was that validation. I now understand why I don't need a name. But they also tell me at that moment, the being so light told me that I had to be quiet. It wasn't all like you cannot talk, but they say you have to be quiet because they're not going to understand. But the other thing they said to me, you will never be alone. There will be people in your path to help you and to guide you. And the other thing was that they said to me, all of these you will share someday. This is not for you to keep. When the time is right, you will share and they will be ready. So imagine that was, oh gosh, 30 years before I could even really start talking openly about it. This is the part, Alan, that was so important, knowing that someone was going to be in my path to help me and to guide me. And that first person was my mom. So, and the way this happened is because in school, now I was in kindergarten and I started to paint beings of light everywhere. And I was like painting in the books and painting in everywhere. And then the teacher got curious and she's like, what is this? Are like the sun, the stars? And I said, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. And it's when she's like, oh, she's having imaginary friends. And the school, they already thought that I was different because like I said to you, I kept really quiet. I didn't play with other children. I was just observing. And then my mom came to the school, and it's when we realized that I not just could see beings so light, but I was seeing more things. And because I was painting auras around all my paintings, I was coloring auras. So it's when the teacher is showing all this to my mom. And it's when I wanted somebody to believe me so bad that I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, these are my friends, the beings so light, and these are the colors that we wear. And my mom made these big mom eyes like, be silent. And I'm like, ooh, because she didn't want me to be in trouble at school. So it was like I went quiet. And when we left and we were in our way home is when my mom said, I believe you. So imagine being finally validated by somebody with that sense of like, and I didn't know what she believed me, but it's when she revealed to me that she also could see things that nobody could. And it's when she revealed to me that she could see what we call spirits. So that was there the moment when I just felt like, okay, now for real, I'm not alone in this human world. And I started to have that little sense like I can belong here.